Hello and welcome back to the podcast. I'm Gwen and I am so excited that you're listening or you're watching on YouTube. I'm back, baby. And guess what? I can breathe this time. If you have listened to the podcast before, which I launched in March, I just kept getting more pregnant and having less oxygen every moment. So it is a joy just to be able to breathe. So this podcast is going to be about the birth story of my son. Why? Because this podcast is all about creating an awesome life. And what could be more awesome than birthing the future of humanity? You know what I'm saying? So I'm very excited to share just some highlights and some of the experience as I've been sharing on Instagram about the wee bundle of joy, and I've been getting questions. And when you go through an experience like that, you kind of just want to share it. And some people want to hear it. Some people definitely don't want to hear it. But if you're here, you want to hear it. So first of all, the thing that most people are asking is just, how are you feeling? Man, that is a loaded question, because it's kind of like one moment you feel like you're on cloud nine with your cute little baby. The next minute, I've got a bee in my bonnet and I'm very agitated with everything happening in life. So really right now, I've really been trying to manage the mood as best as possible. But in recording right now, I just feel glorious. I feel happy, healthy, uplifted. I do physically feel like I'm still recovering from a marathon in one particular area where I birthed the baby. I have run a marathon before and it was like full body pain. Now let's just imagine that concentrated in one area. So she's sitting on ice packs whenever she can, but overall I'm doing well. I'm doing great right now. So in this podcast, my intention is really just to share the story. And I'm really pleased to tell you that this is not a traumatic story. So if I'm not going to share anything that if you're squeamish or don't like, body parts in blood, that kind of stuff, I'm not going to share that. This is hopefully just a really uplifting story. And it's really more than a story of childbirth. It's really a story about the surrender experiment, that book by Michael Singer. I've really tried to channel that in my birth situation, surrendering, really just being releasing resistance and going with the flow. So that's what this story is actually about. And I know in my world, there are many gals who are on the cusp of having a baby, or there's quite a few that are single and really want a baby, or maybe have had some fertility challenges. And so just as you're listening to this, and I just really hope that if I am bothering, if this starts to get agitating because it's like, wow, good for her having it be so easy, just turn me off for now, just give yourself the gift if you're going through it right now of not hearing this story, because it's pretty, I don't want to say easy, but it was easier than I expected. So I'm going to share with you the plan, the process, and the postmortem, and really just the highlights, because we don't got all day for the details, but DM me if you want them and we'll see if I'm willing to share them. So, but I'm still going to give you some good stuff on this episode. So here's the plan. My birthing plan was different than I expected. As you know, I make courses, I take courses, I am a learning gal. I had zero desire to take a course or a class on how to birth a baby. Whenever I thought about it, like, oh, that's something I should definitely do. That's what people do. I could not bring myself to do it. Why? I think I really just wanted to rely on my intuition and going with the flow. And every time I heard anyone took some kind of class, they said, oh, it was the opposite of what I planned for. I'm like, well, if I plan for nothing, maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised. But I do feel like the Instagram algorithm served up some little tasty nuggets, some micro learning here and there. It's funny, I saved like hundreds of posts, saved posts. And did I really ever go back to any of them? No. But I feel like a couple of tips kind of washed over me in the plan. But my ultimate plan was just to have the most natural as possible birth. And truth be told, I was just genuinely terrified, when I let myself truly think about the birth process. So I tried not to think about the birth process and just live in the now. I had the fear of, I'm just not going to make it. Like this, what if I don't make it through childbirth? What if the baby doesn't make it? What if, just all these what ifs. So I had to really just stop, come back to the moment, because it was just wild. The tales my brain would tell. So how it went is, as I was pregnant, reaching that due date, and then nothing happened once I hit the due date. And it was about a week later that I was meeting with my midwife and talking it through and realizing that this is a hefty baby. She told me it could have been around 9 pounds. And the amniotic fluid that supports the baby that was within me was starting to get a little bit lower because this child was big. So what happened was, either I could choose to get induced, meaning having drugs in me to kind of get it going, or I could wait a few more days to see if it happens naturally. But at that point, it might have been a little bit too high risk, and I'd have to go from being with my midwives to being with a doctor who I basically never met. And I was like, but I love my midwives. So I was like, you know what? Natural smatchural. Let's go induction. So now let me tell you about the process of that. So what's kind of cool about the induction process is that it eliminates a little bit of the uncertainty of like, when is this all going to happen? Because it was a Saturday and it was like at 8:30, please arrive, and you will be getting swept away to start the process. When I tell you the thoughts that go through your head when you're like, okay, I'm going to get there at 8:30, then like, what's going to happen to me? Well, here's what happens. So you get in there, you get your room, get all comfortable, and then we start the induction process. And I tell you, I didn't even know what that truly meant until it was happening to me. And they basically put an IV in your hand and have oxytocin go through you, which oxytocin, the happy hormone, also induces you. Probably one of the biggest challenges for me was just the needle. I have weird veins, thin veins that cross. So I was supposed to have it on my left hand and had to get it on my right hand. And I was essentially hooked up to an IV the entire time. Something I've never shared before is that I actually had a high risk pregnancy. I didn't share it with anyone, family, no one, because I really didn't want to talk about it, because if I felt like if I started to share that I had a high risk pregnancy, it would start freaking family members and stuff out. People would ask me, how are you doing? But like, really, how are you doing? Because I know you have a high risk pregnancy. So I really just wanted to not make that a bigger thing. And why it was high risk was I had something called velamentous cord insertion, which basically means that there's the placenta, which is where I believe the food goes to the baby. Usually the cord is in the middle of the placenta and it just feeds the baby. For me, it was on like the side for some reason. And so being on the side when having the baby, it could either like rip out and like kill me, I think, and the baby, or the risk of the baby just not getting enough food during the whole pregnancy. So what's really amazing about modern medicine is that I got to go travel to a special clinic to get like a full day of tests to make sure I wouldn't die during childbirth. And then I was just monitored a little extra heavy throughout my pregnancy to make sure that the baby was growing. So I'm really proud of myself for not broadcasting, oh, I have a high risk pregnancy. And because at the end of the day, it turned out well with a happy, healthy baby. So that's a little aside. But I guess the reason why I also share that is because I had a high risk pregnancy, I had to have heart rate monitors on both, like, so I'm hooked up to an IV and then I have strapped on my stomach 2 heart rate monitors, like gray circles, like this big, to get the baby's heart rate and my heart rate. So I was just attached to things the whole time. It wasn't like, ooh, I can be free. And no, She was bound to technology throughout the process. So when you first get induced, it's pretty bizarre because it's really that calm before the storm. I'm just sitting there for like a few hours and not much is happening until I guess around 3 or so hours into it. Then I'm like, ugh. Starts to feel like you kind of ate something off and you get that wave of like cramp and then it goes away. And then that wave of cramp and then it goes away. It's just like someone slowly turning that up. And it's at first I was just, being tough. Then later I start to really feel it and you start to have the like, kind of feelings. And then I started to hurt so much that it started to make me like actually sick. Very appreciative to my darling husband, Josh, who was beside me the whole time. And he actually like held like a barf bucket for me and was just there like giving me like bites of popsicles or ice or things like that. But that's some real love when your significant other barfs in a bowl and you have to empty it, like, no thanks. It's funny, they have tons of solutions too. If you're sick, they gave me some Gravol through my IV and they had something even stronger to go through the IV. But I actually found that eventually getting sick distracted me from the like abdominal pain. So I was like, no, let me be sick, because it was like a relief. So that was a weird moment. So I went through kind of like the groaning, this sucks phase. Then I kind of went into a bit of a trance. I just sat there with my eyes closed and just didn't say anything on the edge of the bed for, I want to say, an hour and a half. I was just sitting there like as the pain was coming through me, I just like pushed it down mentally. So there were moments of me being like Zen pregnant woman. And then there was just, just both sides of the chaos. So things really started to get serious when my water broke. They broke the water for me. It didn't break myself. So they broke the water. And I think that was around like maybe 6 o'clock, something like that. And once that water broke, let's just turn that pain dial up, shall we? That's exactly what happened. And I love working with midwives because they're not pushing anything on you. They're just saying, like, as a suggestion, we have pain options if you're unwell, which I was. And it was at this point where I could decide to either have an epidural or morphine or fentanyl. And I remember when they were telling me about this in the early stages before, weeks before getting prepared, when they told me that fentanyl was an option, I almost fell out of my chair. Like fentanyl, like the hyper addictive drug that I've seen documentaries on. Like I almost thought it was hilarious that they even said that. Guess what I picked? Yeah. Had a little fentanyl on my the birthday of my son. Wild that I actually went for that. But here's the thing. To me, I could not do an epidural because apparently when you have an epidural, you have to lie down. And I was already strapped with the hand on the stomach, would have been strapped on the back. I just would have felt attached to things. And I really wanted to work with gravity to have this baby. And anytime I lied down, I just could not function. Needed to like be upright as much as possible. So this fentanyl was fantastic. And I don't think I'm addicted to it still. So the midwife who administered it to me did a fantastic job because we're good. But what it basically did was just kind of dull the pain. So I could kind of go into like a trance-like state for a few minutes. But then when the contraction came, it like woke me up. It was like, ah, and then it was, okay, we're back to like calming down. And then, ah, and my midwife told me to start making the om sound, like the om. So Josh he left, which was totally cool. He wanted to just go get like some food before it really started to happen. But he left and then he came back and then I'm like oming in bed. He's like, okay. So we're going about this for, I don't know, a couple more hours. And also time is so strange. So as much as it sounds like such a long day, it also just goes by like, I want to say fast, but also there's moments where you're like, this is never going to end. But around 10:15, it was time to push this baby out. And when I was told, hey, green light, go, push the baby out, I was like, what? I'm not ready. What? Like, I was just not mentally prepared. I'm like, this is not going to work. This is not going to happen. Oh my God. So what happened was we were trying to figure out how am I going to push the baby out? And I didn't know. I was like, is there any way, again, we can work with gravity. Is there some kind of chair like thing? Birthing stool. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. I don't know if you want to Google that, but that is what I used. And it was great. So got me on the birthing stool. Now here's where it was a clutch moment because I had those heart rate monitors on me. They were having trouble reading the baby's heart rate when I was sitting on the birthing stool. And so I was like, oh no, they're like, you're going to have to lie down. I know it really sucks, but like, you're going to have to lie down. I'm like, no. Luckily, Josh said, is there any way that she could like lean back to get the baby's heart rate and then move forward during the contraction? And they said, you know what, we'll try it. It worked. So picture this. I'm sitting on this wooden stool on a bed. And at this point, I just closed my eyes and I heard there was two other backup midwives that came in, didn't even open my eyes to see who they were. There's just midwife number one and two on the side who are there to support me and encourage me and push me. And then Josh is sitting behind me. And what he is doing is essentially being my chair. So when there was a contraction, he would push me forward. The midwives would be like, go. Then when it was over, lean back. Josh would basically catch me. Everyone breathes again. Go forward, go back, breathe. It was like the divine feminine, like the warrior woman in front of me and almost like the calmest version of a man behind me. Like it was almost like role reversal or the different ends of the spectrums of the feminine and masculine energy, but it was a vibe. Okay. And I got to tell you, these midwives who encourage you, they believe you need somebody out. I needed somebody to just truly believe it was possible for me to get this baby out, because you're in it and you're just like, is there even a baby? And you're just like, can I really do this? Like, I don't know. And just the encouragement and the intensity of the women in front of me really helped me get this baby out. So basically it took me about 45 minutes and the baby apparently came out of me. And I remember they're like, he's here. And I was like, what? And this is my reaction. Once I guess I lied down or sat down and they put the baby like on your stomach, I looked at it. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. What? I did not have that crying. I wasn't crying. I just was in disbelief. Like, that was inside me? How? What? Like, it was just oh my God. Wow. But it's such a beautiful thing when you just like gave birth to a baby. And then the baby's whisked away and like weighed, and he weighed 8 pounds and 13 ounces. And the midwives and everyone cleans everything, helps clean everything up. It's a lot going on. There's a lot going on there. But at the very end, after everything's cleaned up, probably the icing on the cake is when my midwife gave me a bag dinner, egg salad sandwich, cookie. Oh, it was great. Chocolate chip oatmeal vegan cookie. I was like, this is amazing. And then you essentially call it a day. Then you have a baby. And they start, teaching you like breastfeeding, helping you kind of answer questions. It's just a whirlwind after that. So that was essentially the process. And It was great. And it's so funny, so funny thinking back when you're having a baby. I do feel like Mother Nature tries to, when I was in it, I'm like, I'm never doing this again. This is the worst thing ever. I'm done. But then I think some kind of nature instincts kick in, because now, like maybe 8 or 10 days later, I'm just like, that wasn't so bad. It wasn't that bad. So it's because Mother Nature wants you to have more babies, and they don't want you to discourage others, which I don't. I really do believe that this is probably the most beautiful thing that's ever happened to me. So highly recommend babies, everyone. And so in terms of the postpartum, the after baby, well, that night I slept for 30 minutes. Just the adrenaline was like, whoo, wild. And it truly just now feels so, it feels so natural, but also just so surreal at the same time. It's like this baby, it's like he's always been there. He's always, but that's not true. So it's just, I'm still figuring it out. And I still feel like I have that oxytocin really running high through my body. And I'm just really happy, just really basking in the happiness and the appreciation for the miracle of life. Yes. And so I will say, of course, there are moments of pure bliss. There are moments of agitation, but overall, it was probably one of the most memorable experiences of my life. So that is my story, y'all. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this episode, I would love for you to share it or comment on it, or let me know if you have any questions. And if I feel comfortable sharing any specifics, feel free to leave a comment or DM me on Instagram if you have any further questions on the story. And I'm not fully geared up in working mode yet, but I'll be back to the course world and the learning world soon enough. So if you're interested, I'd love for you to join my email list. So when I gear back up, you can join me for some learning adventures and making your own courses. And also follow me on social media, mostly Instagram right now, for all of the baby updates. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a beautiful day and take amazing care of yourself.